Namaste, Anandji. Namaste. Hari Om. Hari Om.
Namaste, namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.
I have been
So,
enjoying the last few minutes of your session, and I was
oh,
with my video off, but I was just imbibing the beautiful relaxation, a very beautiful relaxation there.
thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, Yogiji. So, uh, please open your camera if possible. So, I just going to be a, yeah. Okay. Hari Om, all of you. So, please mute some of your. Anandji, please unmute yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Hari Om, Namaste. Welcome all of yogis and yoginis for this beautiful weekend webinar section with Dr. Ananda Balayogiji Bhavani. I just want to give a few words in this invitation to in this section. And today, this is our fourth day, the science meets spirituality. We know that last three sections we had a very excellent, amazing sections with the different yogis and masters. And the fourth day webinar, we invited Dr. Ananda Balayogi ji. I already sent all of you about the details and link of Balayogi. Anyway, with all respect, I invited him in this webinar section with all our yogis from all over the world who came very early morning with a pleasant mind after our yoga and meditation. And Dr. Ananda Balayogi, I come to know the ashram while I am three-year living in Auroville. So during the time, couple of times I visited, few times I visited his seminar, and it was one of the very attractive section, a young Balayogi giving a speech in the yoga competition day. So then I tried to search who is this Yogiji. This is how I reach and come to know Ammaji. So I have a couple of time conversation with Ammaji. Still, that conversation deep in my heart. The one word still I used to take from her. She said that the biggest tragedy in the life is that God is so close to us. That word still vibrating in my heart. This is the word I always keep in my yogic journey from her. So Ammaji is still here. And Dr. Balayogiji is the son of great Maharshi, Swami Gidananda Giri Maharaj. So this is the devout son. He devoted to the world. So Swamiji is no more with us. But how I come to know Swamiji is, I think in 1980s, the end of the 80s, Swamiji come to my hometown. He came and integrated one of the yoga competition. And this is how I remember, even that time I never met him, but I come to know him from the later. So I was so blessed. I'm not sure that Dr. Vijayaraghavan is here. He is the one of the organizer of that program with Swamiji. I hope maybe he will join later, Dr. Vijayaraghavan. So this all, I'm so blessed here with Dr. Ananda Balayogiji's presence and coming to us, accept this invitation. So long I'm waiting to get him and introduce with you all. And the participants all are yoga teachers. And and the Dr. Ananda Balayogiji, I already know, I told you that he is the Acharya and his own ashram is located in Pondicherry, the south part of India. So, and Ananda Balayogi is the director of that Balaji Vidyapeth Pondicherry, and he wrote 24 books, 90 DVDs, and more than 300 publications. Still research and studies going on. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I welcome you, Dr. Ananda Balayogi. I hand over this and my humble pranam to you and my pranam to the feet of Amma and Swami Gidananda Giri Maharaj. Hari Om.
Thank you so much, Yogacharya Saji, for that very heartful introduction. You know, I think the most important aspect of yoga is heartfulness, the heart-to-heart connection. Everything else is secondary. So there's a beautiful heart-to-heart connection, and let us build on that through the session today. Really pleased to be with all of you. I hope my audio and video is clear. If it is, just give me a wave so that I know we are all alive and we are not zombies in the Zoom womb. Yes, beautiful. Because we have had so much of the Zoom womb. I call it the Zoom womb because Gurukula is the womb of the Guru in which the Sishya, the student, grows. Just as the baby grows in the womb of the beloved mother. So the Gurukula for us has gone online. So it is now the Zoom womb. That is how we call it in our tradition here. And today I'm going to be focusing more on the work I'm doing in the university, a medical university where I work as professor and director of the Center for Yoga Therapy Education and Research. But long before that, long before that, I was born into yoga thanks to my beloved father and mother. And to hear Saji talk about them with love, I think that's the most important thing for me, is that through me, people can love my parents. Through me, they can love my teachers. I think I don't need anything else. So very beautiful to have that love. And I was conceived in yoga. As Saji was saying, I had a small chuckle. He said, you know, this young Balayogi talking. And now I'm not so young anymore, but a lot of white hair is there. But I was very happy the first day I got the first white hair, that finally people will start taking me seriously. Because if you don't have white hair, they think you're not old enough to know anything. So I struggled a lot with that for many years. And when I started getting white hair, I was like, wow, now at least they will think I have something to say. And now it's becoming more of white, so I'm happy about that. Let me begin by sharing my slides. I believe I can. Yes, beautiful. And I think you should be able to see my PowerPoint there. So that will be good. Yes. And so today my focus, because Saji asked me, he said, you know, we want to focus on science and yoga. We want to find where they come together. And I consider myself a living human bridge between the traditional science of yoga and the modern science of medicine. So as a living bridge between them, I thought it would be most appropriate to talk about the principles and concepts behind this integration, and then how we are actually doing it in our medical institution. So the integration of yoga therapy within the modern medical system. I think this is a very important aspect, that it is very rare to find this, and that is why I wanted to share this with you this morning. I offer my salutations to the Guru Parampara, and I'm going to be invoking them at this point. Tad Paramparaye Vidmahe ज्ञानलिङ्गेश्वराय धीमहि तन्नो गुरुः प्रचोदयाते। ओम योग महर्षि डॉक्टर स्वामी गीतानंद गिरि गुरु महाराज की जय। ओम पुदुवै कलैमामणि पुदुवै शक्ति योगचारिणी अम्माजी मीनाक्षी देवी भवनानी गुरु माता की जय। ओम The gurus who have come before me and given me the opportunity to be born into yoga, to be conceived in yoga. And when people ask me, they say, Dr. Ananda, can you talk about your life before yoga and after yoga, which everybody loves to talk about? I say, I'll have to start talking of my past lives because this whole life has been one of yoga. They say, what is your experience in yoga? I say, well, you add my age plus 9 months because I was conceived very mindfully by my parents through the yoga sadhana and yoga abhyasa. And so right from that moment of conception, where half the chromosomes from my father and half the chromosomes from my mother came together to form the 23 pairs of chromosomes that I am today, well, right from that moment, yoga has been part of my life. Then I grew up in the ashram and was trained in all the traditional arts, the systems. And then at the point where I needed to go to school, they said, well, you have been educated at home, but you don't need an official education so that the world will, think you know something. And so at the age of 13, I went to school. So till the age of 13, I was schooled in the ashram. My mother taught me English. Another of my father's students, Renukaka, taught me mathematics. I had Tamil teachers coming and going, learning the Samskrita, the Vedic chanting, the music, the dance, the mridangam, all of that was going on. And then after completing my schooling, we realized that just like my father had done, we would like to integrate the modern medical science with yoga therapy. And hence I went on to become a medical doctor. And in the process, took on a new perspective of modern medicine because unlike most doctors who have a medical degree and come to yoga, I had the yoga before I went into my medical training. Hence, the whole perspective of medicine for me was one of wholesomeness, purnam, completeness. And I saw the interconnection in every aspect of medicine. And today, that is what we try to share when we share about it. So here at the Balaji Vidyapeeth, a deemed to be university in Pondicherry, we have a center for yoga therapy, education and research. And we focus on something called cellulogenesis. So this cellulogenesis is a term you're going to hear a lot in today's presentation. And most probably you will not have heard it before if you haven't attended one of the sessions at our university. And you're going to definitely get something out of this with the cellulogenesis. So what is this cellulogenesis? Cellulogenesis is the focus on health and wellness. So cellulogenesis, genesis means to give birth, salutare is health and wellness. Rather than pathogenesis, which is the focus on disease. And most of the time, we are all so focused on disease that we lose track of what health and wellness are. So we are trying to move from pathogenesis to cellulogenesis. That is the quantum leap that we are trying to make through the work that we are doing. Now, normally, you may have come to know about CAM, C-A-M, complementary and alternative medicine. And the CAM therapies are therapies where you have medicine that can either work on its own or work in tandem with other systems. So the initial journey is from alternative. Now, when we talk about alternative medicine, here there's going to be friction because alternate means either me or you. So there is a duality the moment I say alternate. Either you are in the room with a patient or I am going to be there. We both cannot be there at the same time. That is alternative. But the word complementary comes in. Complement means that both can work together. So you and me can work together at the same time with the same patient to help them better. But then still there is duality because it is still you and me working together. Earlier it was you or me. Now it is you and me, but still there's duality. But then the next moment is integrative medicine, where it is no longer you or me. It is no longer you and me. It is we. And this is the quantum leap when we talk about alternative, coming through complementary, coming into integrative. And the World Health Organization now uses the term TCI medicine, traditional, complementary, and integrative medicine. This is the concept that WHO is giving us today. And recently, I have been part of the working group task force for creating standards in yoga through the WHO. And this was a concept we kept on bringing into all our work. Traditional, complementary, and integrative is how yoga has to come into the medical system, not as an alternative. Because when you try to bring it in as an alternate, you're going to face resistance, you're going to have friction, and you're going to have a lot of struggle. Rudyard Kipling made a statement. He said, "Oh, east is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet." One of Rudyard Kipling's famous statements. The east is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet. But my dear Kipling, apologies, because I must tell Kipling that they have actually come together. The East and the West have come together. How have they come together? Through yoga. And I love this asanas with Mowgli. I hope you can see my screen. I just love this concept of asanas with Mowgli because Mowgli is, Rudyard Kipling's guy for the Jungle Book. And to have him doing asanas, I'm like, Kipling, it's come together. East and West have come together through yoga. I really love this. The East-West dichotomy seems to have been overcome in recent times, and these Eastern healing traditions, they are slowly and steadily percolating healthcare systems worldwide. Especially where is this true? Mind-body therapies. Mind-body therapies are the ones that actually are really making this happen because they can focus on what we call health promotion. What is this health promotion? Well, we have intrinsic connections between the human brain, our mind, our body, and our individual behavior. So the brain, which is our nervous system, our mind, our body, our individual behavior, well, all of it has connections and they are being used. Because what is yoga ultimately? Yujjate anena iti yoga. Yoga is that which is integrative in spirit. It integrates all the parts so that the wholesomeness, the Purnam, can manifest in abundance. If you go to the UK, the National Health Service, it is very interesting that the NHS actually on their website has this information. Dozens of scientific trials of varying quality are published on yoga, while there's scope for more rigorous studies. Most studies suggest yoga is safe and effective. I think this is the key statement. The NHS is making a statement. Yoga is safe and effective. Where do they limit it? To increase physical activity, especially the strength, flexibility, and balance. And they go on to state on their website, there is some evidence that regular yoga practice may benefit those with high blood pressure, heart disease, body aches and pains, including lower back pain, depression, and stress. Now, that is quite an endorsement when you look at it coming from the NHS. And in case you haven't seen this before, I'm giving you fodder to go out and spread the good word. Let's go over to the USA, that crazy continent where my mother was born. And that is why I have 50% of genes coming from that side. So I can call it crazy because it's part of my 50% genes. This huge part called the USA. And just between 2012 and 2017, the use of yoga and meditation went up from 9.5 to 14.3% for yoga and 4.1 to 14.2 for meditation. That was just in 5 years. This is the number of people who are starting to take up these practices. Why are people taking it up? Because someone said, I did it and I felt good. That is the main reason. Not because of new scientific studies, because scientific studies are not read by too many people. But the word of mouth, the proof of the pudding is in the practice of yoga itself. Yoga as a complementary health approach. The NIH, they did a survey and they found 58% do it to maintain health and well-being. There are those 22% said the doctor recommended it. I love that. The fact that 22% of the responders, the doctor had recommended it. 16% to treat specific conditions, of which 10% was musculoskeletal. That is a major, major place where these practices are come in. And what is the number one reason? Back pain. Now, every one of us in this Zoom room, and there are 82 of us right now, we have all experienced at least one episode of real bad back pain in our life, especially if we are above 40. Anybody above 40 in this room would have had at least one episode where they really felt what the back was. It's the time your back says, hi, did you forget me? Well, I'll help you remember me by giving you some pain. One of the major things. Another study, the Yoga in America 2016 study. You say, why are you talking about 2016 and not 2021? Well, this is the latest study we have. We don't yet have the next study out. And in that, they found that the top 5 reasons for starting yoga are flexibility, 61%, stress relief, 56%, general fitness, 49%, to improve overall health, 49%, and physical fitness, 44%. 86% of practitioners reported, self-report, a strong sense of mental clarity, what we call Chitta Prasadanam in Maharishi Patanjali's term. Chitta Prasadana, mental clarity. 73% had physical strength. Again, Patanjali tells us you can be as strong as an elephant, elephantine strength. By contemplating strength, he talks about in Vibhudipada. And what I loved about this, 79% give back to their communities. This is what yoga is all about. It is not about you attaining liberation, but you serving others. The concept of seva is such an important concept. It's not about it's my spirituality at your cost. No, it is my spirituality that enables me to grow and understand it is we and not me anymore. When I focus on me, I become more and more mean. Me, mean. When I focus on thee, we, I move into that beautiful space of abundance. When I move from I to we, even illness becomes wellness. It is shifting from the back of the brain, which is the survival instinct, me, to the prefrontal cortex, thee, where we start to realize what a beautiful universe we live in and how we are all connected to each other. These were studies that came out of that survey. Now let's go to PubMed. PubMed is the gold standard of medical research. The gold standard of medical research is PubMed. And in PubMed, when I last had a look at it, 6,306 results came up for yoga therapy. When I typed in the search word yoga therapy in PubMed, 6,306, that's the number of gold standard research that you can find out there. Because PubMed is still the gold standard of research. When we talk about it, is your research published in a PubMed index journal? Scopus and other things that you hear about, well, they are more commercial. PubMed is still free. Scopus, even to go and search on it, you have to pay money. So the moment you have to pay money to search a study, you know that it's part of a bigger mafia, okay? The moment it is free, you realize that there's some sense of sharing there. Now let's come to right here in Pondicherry, my beloved yoga research mentor, Professor Madan Mohan. He has been a pioneer in integrating yoga and modern medicine. And in his 4 decades of service at JIPMER, one of India's premier medical institutes, he introduced yoga. And in the year 2008, we had an opportunity to document it with a series of activities where medical students, yes, those are medical students in one of India's topmost medical institutions, learning to practice pranayama, relaxation. You can see them. And these photos were taken in 2008, but his work goes back to 1980. 1980, he started working, and he and my father published one of the first scientific research studies on Savitri pranayama in 1984 and laid the foundation. I have been blessed to be his student and work with him for the past 2.5 decades and continue to work with Sir Madan Mohan Sir, one of the greatest pioneers, a physiologist par excellence. Now, if you want to see who are the people doing this type of work, well, we have Professor Madan Mohan up here. I hope you can see my cursor moving near his face. You have Dr. Bijlani, my dear Bijlani sir, who retired as the head of physiology at AIIMS, the topmost medical college in India, in Delhi. Sadbir Khalsa from Harvard, who is an amazing proponent of this. My dear Shirley Tellis, who is the most prolific yoga researcher. She has published more papers in yoga research than any other person in history. And amazing work she has done. Now she is with Patanjali, Swami Ramdev. She was earlier with the SBRSA University and Dr. Nagendra and Dr. Nagaratna. My dear Larry Payne in the USA, who has done amazing work and brought yoga therapy as a program in the university at LMU in California. And of course, Dean Ornish, well, I'd be surprised if you haven't heard of this guy, because he really documented how when you change the way you eat, the way you exercise, the way you live, how you can change everything, including, coronary artery disease, the regression, the reversal of heart disease. And people said, oh, once you have an artery blocked, you have to operate. He said, no, you change your lifestyle, you change your pattern of thinking, you change the way you eat, and you can change the way the blood flows in your heart. Amazing work. And my last visit to the USA at the IAYT event, all of them, well, except for John Kepner, who was the CEO, the rest of them are all the medical doctors, including Timothy and my dear Dilip Sarkar, and all of them taking yoga as a therapy into the Western world. And here at Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth, so many international symposiums bringing the best of the East and the West together. Again, amazing books have come out in this field. Amazing books have come up in this field. The Principles and Practice of Yoga in Healthcare, Sadbir, Lorenzo Colin, Timothy and Shirley put together a beautiful book. Dilip Sarkar's book, one of my recent ones with Lee Majewski on yoga therapy as a whole person approach to health, dealing with chronic diseases, yoga and grief relief, yoga and the science in pain care, yoga therapy as a creative response to pain, yoga as medicine, yoga therapy and integrative medicine. All these are amazing books that are bridging modern medicine and the traditional science of yoga. Another beautiful resource was created by Joseph Lepage, one of the pioneers of yoga therapy in the West. He had trained at Kripalu and he has a wonderful program, integrative yoga therapy, that now Kripalu runs. And he came to India, went around all the yoga therapy centers and created a video project documenting the work at all these centers, including ours. And amazing documentation. I told Joseph, you made a video that is so much better than what even I could make for myself. And that was the same statement made by every one of the institutions. So he really understood each institution and brought out how yoga therapy is coming out and being perceived. Now, when we want to bring yoga and, modern medicine together, I think one of the big struggles is, how are we going to do it? What is the methodology? What is the tool? And what is vital? Communication. I think not just in this, but I think everything on earth, the most vital thing is communication. And we human beings today, we have tools of communication that are better than ever. And at present, we are the worst in communicating. There is more miscommunication, discommunication, and breakdown of communication in an era that has all the tools of communication. Within 1 second, we can all connect. Even now, imagine all of us are connected across the Ethernet from so many different places. What amazing connectivity we have. And the pandemic has shown us how we can be even more connected if we choose to. The main point here is, do we choose to? So when we want to communicate, how are we going to communicate? That is the next question. And this is where in 2019, along with Marilsa, Matthew Taylor and Amy Wheeler, we put together an article that talks about shared foundations for practice, the language of yoga therapy. And this is available freely online. And if at any point, any of these resources you cannot get, you just email to me and you will get it, because I believe caring is sharing. And I believe that caring and sharing should be done in a loving, compassionate manner without any strings attached at all. And for the seekers, well, you know that all you have to do is type Bhavanani Yoga and you will get thousands of papers and articles and videos for free download, because I believe in copy left, not in copyright. And so I believe sharing is caring. Yoga therapy is nesting inside the larger yoga, and therefore is neither separate from nor greater than yoga. I think this is something we have to keep very, very much in our mind when we talk about yoga as a therapy, because people often have a tendency to think of it as something separate from yoga. And this is where the IAYT, their definition, where the application of principles and practices of yoga to promote health and well-being within a therapeutic relationship, including personalized assessment, goal setting, lifestyle management, and yoga practices for individuals or small group. This is the latest definition brought out by the IAYT. And I have been associated for about 20 years with IAYT as one of the international advisors. And we keep on trying to strive how to keep the yoga in yoga therapy. Now, coming back to my beginning where I talked about cellulogenesis. I wanted to spread this concept because this is the core of understanding yoga as a therapy. When you want to understand yoga as a therapy, well, salutogenesis is a very, very important concept. So it is derived from the Latin salus, health, and the Greek genesis, which means the source. So in combination, salutogenesis means the sources of health and wellness. Now to contrast it, we want to contrast it with pathogenesis. So pathogenesis is looking at what causes disease. It is trying to avoid problems. It is reactive. The absence of disease is what you want. You have disease, how can we eradicate it? It's against pain or loss. You have pain and loss, how can I eradicate it? And it is focused on survival. Whereas salutogenesis is looking at what causes health, how to reach our potential. It is proactive because we want to manifest health and wellness. And we want to discover how to live life fully. That is the main important aspect here. Because it is all a continuum. Illness and wellness. On one end, you have the disability, symptoms and signs leading to death. On the other side, awareness, education, growth leading to high level of wellness. And so the left side, the illness part, is where the treatment paradigm, pathogenic treatment paradigm, is focusing on that. But here in yoga therapy, we don't want to restrict ourselves. So we are focusing on the health and illness, the whole continuum, that we are looking at what is called the wellness paradigm. Salutogenesis is a wellness paradigm as opposed to pathogenesis, which is a treatment paradigm. And this is an important distinction to be made when we want to practice yoga as a therapy. Because everybody wants to focus on what are the practices for hypertension. Can you give me 2 practices for bronchial asthma? That is a pathogenic focus. What we need to work on is salutogenesis, not just the disease, but the disease plus. And that is why it is not just eradicating or trying to cure the disease, but we want to manifest healing. The treatment paradigm is looking for a cure. The wellness paradigm is looking at healing. And there is a big difference between both of them, chalk and cheese for sure. Health is a dynamic continuum. On one side, the total ill health, and on the other side, the total health. Pathogenic and salutogenic. One is deterioration, the other is enhancing health. Now, where does this all come in? Well, the concept is called psychoneuroimmunology. This is the concept, and this is the most important word you need to know. PNI. PNI. And as I already told you, I believe in copyleft. And so this PPT is already available on SlideShare, along with another 400 PowerPoint presentations of mine for free download. Again, Bhavanani, Yoga, SlideShare, and you can download any of those PowerPoint presentations you want, including this one. Because I have been blessed by so many people who share knowledge with me, and it is important for me to keep it flowing forward. The nervous system, your endocrine system, and your immune system, especially during this pandemic, we have really understood how they are connected. And how this is connected to what you think and what you feel, your thoughts and emotions. Your thoughts and emotions start to affect your nervous system through the hypothalamus, the limbic system, and the hypothalamus. The emotional volatility comes down through your pituitary gland. Your pituitary gland starts to influence your endocrine orchestra, your immune function. And so stress is going to lead you towards pathogenesis. Now, instead of stress, what happens if you put yoga into it? What happens if you put breathing into it? What happens if you put relaxation into it? Well, the same mechanism starts to work in the reverse. So instead of leading to deterioration of health, you start to enhance health using the same mechanism. The machine is the same. What you put into it is important. You put potatoes into it, you have potato chips. You put bananas into it, you have banana chip. And you put plastic into it, you have junk food. Well, potato chips and banana chips may also classify as junk food, but you put plastic into it, you have absolute terrible trash. What do you put into it? You put negativity into yourself, and then you say, oh, why is this happening to me? What did you put into yourself? What were the ingredients you put into your system? You put in positivity, you put in love, you put in gratitude, you put in respect, and suddenly abundance manifests. And this is why these very three, nervous system, endocrine system, immune system, you put stress in, retards healing and delays rehabilitation. And then you have our guys in the media who tell you, you're going to die today, your friends are going to die today, your family is going to die today, the economy is bad, the world's going to die, no one's going to help you. And then what happens? Your whole immune system becomes worse. And what they said comes true. Yeah, what they said comes true, but why did it come true? Because they put all that junk into you. Now, if you can just tell people, we human beings have a capacity of great resilience. We have been through a lot in human history, and we have come out. Can we come out the other end of this pandemic as a better version of humanity? I'm not talking about survival. I'm talking about coming out the other end as a better version of humanity who can share, care, love, and have compassion, empathy for fellow beings, rather than the narrow-minded, survival instinct-driven, featherless bipeds we have become. That's where the fear-mongering comes in. You put in the positivity, and what happens? Yeah, okay. This is the negativity first, okay? I've jumped the gun a bit here. So what happens? You have the stress coming into your hypothalamus region, coming down, and all of this mechanism, fight or flight, anxiety. And you are like, oh my God, I'm going to die and everybody's going to die and the world's going to end. Okay, fine. If the world ends today, so what? You have done your best. Have you done your best till your last breath? That's what counts. Have you helped other people till your last day on this planet? That's what counts. The rest of it will happen automatically. But no, oh my God, I have to survive. My family has to survive. My job has to survive. Oh no, survival, survival, survival. It's all back here. The brainstem, me, and become meaner and meaner. It's all back here. The brainstem driven, abhinivesha klesha, it is called in yoga. The survival instinct that drives even the most intelligent, wise people to do the most stupid things. Because we want to survive. And what happens? In yoga, we understand that this comes down from the mental agitation in the Manomaya Kosha. It comes down into the agitation of the energy flows. The prana, the nadis are unstable. And it comes down into the physical body as disease. The adi, which is the psychosomatic disassociation, has come down into the physical body and led to disease. Where did disease start? It started in that psychosomatic disassociation, where we felt separate from the rest of the universe in which we live. My father used to say the first disease is the disease of dichotomy, where you think you are different than the universe in which you live. And then you separate. There's a tearing apart, and that's where disease starts. That is why the Anandamaya Kosha is where we understand how we are connected to everything and everyone. And then you are not alone anymore because you become all one. You move from being alone and lonely to feeling that sense of all oneness. And this is where these psychosomatic diseases then come down, the psychic phase. You just don't feel like yourself. You feel very upset. You get very irritated. You are very tense. You don't know what's happening. It then comes down into the mind and the body, and the blood pressure shoots up. Your blood sugar shoots up. Your muscles tighten. Then comes into the body. And now it starts to become permanent. Your hypertension becomes permanent. Your diabetes becomes permanent. Your cancer becomes permanent. Whatever it be, it becomes permanent. And then once it becomes permanent, it starts to alter your body. That is where it starts to target the end organs. Psychic, psychosomatic, somatic, and organic. Now, this organic is not the organic food which is good for you. This organic means you have target organ damage, end organ damage, okay? Kidneys are going out, your lungs are going out, your eyes are going out, your nerves are going out. Where did it start? That psychic disassociation. And that is why yoga is about going backwards. You go back to the source, put all the pieces together so that you are not in pieces anymore. And this is where one of my mentors, Dr. Selvamurthy, one of India's greatest scientists, recently he addressed us for the International Day of Yoga, and he said, yoga enables us to withstand stress, to approach stress, to fight it, because what does it do? It's a 3-in-1 action. It can modify your perception of the stressor so that the stressor is there, but you are not stressed by it anymore. Now, this is the key point of stress management. If you can change the stressor, please do so. If you cannot change the stressor, you have to change your perception of it. Because as long as you perceive something as stressful, you cannot reduce the stress. And this is where the power of choice, one of my famous statements in the last 2 years online has been, the power of choice is the superpower of being human. It's the superpower. We human beings have a superpower, that is the power of choice. How do you choose to perceive the world around you? How do you choose to perceive the people around you? How do you choose to perceive whatever happens to you? Because when you modify your perception, automatically nothing can stress you. So nothing can stress you unless you let it stress you. That is the bottom line. Nothing can stress you unless you let it stress you. You change your perception, it has no power over you anymore. The second, optimize your response to it. When you get stressed, instead of hitting the ceiling, try to make sure you just hit the fan and not the ceiling anymore, okay? The next step is you just jump off your bed. The next one is you stay on your bed. And the next one is you can lie down in Shavasana and not worry about it anymore. Step by step, you reduce your response to the stress. And we have done so many studies that you can give the same stress to the person before and after they do relaxation. And after relaxation, the way the body responds to the stress will be blunted. So instead of a heart rate going up to 200, your heart rate only goes to 150. Instead of your blood pressure becoming 180, it only becomes 160. What you're doing, you're blunting the response through the yoga practices. And then the third one, why hold on to the stress? If you have junk at home, I hope you go out and throw the trash away. Because if you keep on keeping all your trash at home, your home will be trash. If you have trash in your thoughts and you keep on having them there, hold on to it. He said it, she said it, they did it, this happened, that happened. Your consciousness will be filled with junk, junk, junk. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. So what do you need to do? You have to throw it out. So what do? You catch hold of the stress. You say, you stress, I've caught hold of it. You take in a deep breath. And then you throw it out. And you say, get out of here. I don't want you anymore. I tell you, you keep doing that to the stress, it will know it's not wanted. Because most people are hugging the stress. They're hugging the problems. They love the problems so much. They're like, what would I do if I didn't have my problems? Because what would I talk about? You meet people, when they meet each other, what do they talk about? You know what happened yesterday? I had this. You know, my problem is greater than yours. Your problem is nothing. You know, my problem, my stress. And you hold on to it. How will you get rid of it? You have to say, thank you so much, stress, for coming into my life. Catch hold of it and say, get out. I don't need you anymore. You throw the stress out. When you throw it out, it is a gesture that says, I want to be free. I want to be light. People carry around loads of stress. And that is why the stressor that comes into our life, the stressor is only one small thing. What it does, it creates a tension in us. How we deal with it. You deal with that stressor in a proactive manner, you move towards positive health, H plus, salutogenesis. You deal with it in a negative manner, pathogenesis, you break down H minus. So what is common? The stress is common. The same stress can either kill you or make you a better person. What is the difference? How you choose to perceive it, what you choose to do about it. And this is why we have to move from being a victim to being a master. We have to move from being a victim of destiny to becoming a master of our own destiny by the choices we make every moment in our life. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, in the now. My father would say, do it now, do it now, do it now. And he used to go, din, 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 din. Din, 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 din. Do it now, do it now. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, now. Because yoga lies in the now. Maharishi Patanjali in the very first sutra says, Atha means the now. In this present moment, which is the most auspicious, best moment to do anything. Atha yoga anushasanam. Where does yoga come into play? In the present moment. And that is where we have the power of choice. And what happens is the stress that comes in, we can alter it. We can alter it by changing the perception of stress. You can see this highlight I'm making right here. Perceived stress, that is the key. Because if you perceive it as negative, you are going to go through disease. You perceive it and deal with it proactively, you don't have to go through that disease process. You can start to move into something. And so, the same mechanism, nervous, endocrine, immune system, through the yogic relaxation, you are enhancing the healing and facilitating rehab. So you can see that the mechanism is the same. The machine is the same. Do you put stress into it or do you put yogic relaxation into it? What you put into it is your choice. And that is why long ago Plato said, the treatment of the part shouldn't be attempted without a treatment of the entirety. The treatment of the body without treating the mind and soul is a useless waste of time. About 2000 years ago. Absolute wisdom. And this is why we try to bring yoga into healthcare, because it can prevent and combat the modern pandemic of stress-borne disorders. The scientific evidence shows it is promotive, preventive, and maybe curative. It is safe, non-pharmacological therapy and an effective lifestyle adjuvant. These are the main points when it comes into healthcare that yoga and yoga therapy start to bring in. We can prevent and manage the psychosomatic stress-related disorders, reduce or eliminate the drug dosage and dependence in so many conditions. But I always remind people, yoga therapists must work in tandem with the medical team, because the medical team understands one part of the patient. We as a yoga therapist understand another part, but we need to work as a team. That is when it becomes integrative. Otherwise, it is alternative and complementary. This is where collaboration is the key word when we want to bring this. Lifestyle modifications, Dean Ornish, talking about how yoga is a system of perfect tools to achieve union and healing, rehabilitation, coping skills, healthy diet, relaxation, expenditure, aging, psychotherapy, women's health, research, all these places it can come in. Showing that we can reverse heart disease, respiratory disorders, a therapeutic tool for children with, mental health issues and, intelligent retard issues that are there, the IQ issues that are there, metabolic syndrome, obesity, and in psychiatry, so many conditions. Again, we are finding that more research is being done. And what are they focusing on? The three major conditions: mental health, cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease. This is where it comes in. And I would like you to have a look at this, a very beautiful image from indeedcare.com. At the body level, creating healing and restoring function. At the mind level, creating healing and reducing suffering. And at the spirit level, reducing suffering and creating community. A beautiful way to understand how yoga therapy comes in. Again, psychoneuroimmunology, just in case you forgot that key aspect of how it all comes into play. Because the stress and the relaxation, the balance is what we are constantly trying to work on. You have to reduce the stress response, enhance the relaxation response. Because relaxation response will induce the healing response. And that is why I feel yoga's greatest contribution to modern healthcare is in relaxation. Because this relaxation is non-pharmacological, it is safe, and it can be done any place, by anyone. And so we have to move a leap upstream from pathogenic to salutogenic. We have to focus on health, a culture of active health and developing health assets. This is where, as a lifestyle, healthy physical activities, healthy thinking, healthy eating, healthy recreation, and healthy relationships. Well, the five-pronged approach of yoga as a lifestyle modification, which comes in tune with the WHO, that talks about physical well-being, mental well-being, social well-being, and spiritual well-being. And as you all know, the 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, Yama Niyama, they focus on enhancing social well-being, social health. Asana and Pranayama, well, definitely we can say physical health will be enhanced. Through Pratyahara and Dharana, mental health. And through Dhyana and Samadhi, well, definitely we are working at spiritual health. So the 4 domains that World Health talks about, the social, the physical, mental, and spiritual, well, all 4 are already found in the Ashtanga of Maharishi Patanjali. And we need to realize healing is multifactorial. Lifestyle, attitude, relaxation, breathing, all these components need to come together when you want to bring yoga therapy into the modern medical system and speak the language of the modern medical professionals. So how do we put it into practice? Well, all of this has happened at Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth. Our team with our Vice Chancellor, our Dean, Registrar, and others, and creating a center where we educate future yoga therapists, helping the patients recover from the illnesses, researching scientifically the hows and whys of yoga, offering clinical services where more than 80,000 participants have benefited from orthopedics, general medicine, dermat, OG, psychiatry, and all. And people coming to us for their health needs and being helped in the community with the children with special needs in our palliative ward, the work that is done in the palliative ward, work done in the psychiatric ward. We go right into the ward, taking yoga into each and every patient's bed. And you take yoga into the bed. Work with the children with special needs, And look at them, such beautiful expression. Yoga bringing out the best of each individual, making them the best version of themselves. And actually, if you look at this, the ones who are not doing it too well are actually our yoga trainers. The children with special needs are actually doing a better job there. People needed in the community, pregnant antenatal mothers in the community, out in health camps, the waiting room where the patients wait to get registered, and taking it cross-culturally across all religions. This gentleman had a lung removed because of cancer. And when he came to yoga OPD, I said, what do you want from yoga? He said, I know I'm going to die. But he said, I'm not able to pray my God. I want to do my namas. I want to bend down and do my namas. I cannot do it because of the lung being removed, my cancer and the surgery. After 10 sessions at Saita, he comes back. Look at the smile on his face as he thanks me. And he said, now I can pray God. I am at peace and I don't mind dying. Whenever Allah calls me, I am willing to go. That is healing. You don't cure the cancer, but you have created healing. You have created an openness in those end life stages. The research, we have published about 137 papers, 16 compilations, 7 chapters. And what we are finding in general is when you add yoga therapy as an adjuvant, the modern medical approach, what happens is you start off with one drug at X dose. After a few months, you add the second drug or you increase the dose. After 2 years, you increase the dose or add a new drug because the disease is constantly progressing. We are giving the medical management, but the disease is not, the progression is not halting. Now, when you add yoga as a therapy with this, I'm not saying alternative, integrative. When you bring the yoga therapy with the modern medical management, you start to actually retard the progression of the disease, which means the medical management is enhanced. The compliance of the patient to the medical management is enhanced. And so I tell the pharmaceutical representatives when they meet me, they think I'm a weirdo. I am, but anyway. I say you guys should support yoga research because you know what? If you bring yoga into it, your drugs are going to work better. We are not competitive to you. Huh? But they never get it. They don't come back the second time. They think this weirdo is not going to write my prescription, so it's not going to happen. We have worked in recent times on essential hypertension, the psychiatric ward, chronic kidney disease, sleep deprivation in healthcare professionals, how you can reduce the stress after they have stayed awake the whole night. Well, 15 minutes of Shavasana absolutely brings them into a beautiful state. So after every night duty, you should be doing 15 minutes of Shavasana and suddenly you're back to normal. Lung disease in pregnancy, again, maternal and fetal cardiovascular. We have shown that music and yoga therapies can reduce the anxiety in people posted for angiography, in children with autism, in patients with diabetic lung, in people who have chronic rhinosinusitis. Add Brahmari to the medical management and you have an amazing outcome. In children who have autism spectrum, give them the yoga and their oral hygiene becomes better. And one of the high impact publications was on depression, where not only did depression come down, but anxiety also reduced in our patients. Again, in alcohol de-addiction, reducing the craving, protecting the kidney in diabetes. The elderly women inmates of a hospice, how can you help the nervous system to be better? How can you improve the neuromuscular function and reduce the autism severity in children with autism? And again, we all have had a root canal treatment, you go in for a root canal treatment of a dental extraction, the anxiety, bring in pranayama and relaxation, you can reduce the anxiety. And so the patient outcome is better after that surgery, dental surgery. We are one of the few places in the world where yoga therapy has come into dentistry also, has come into nursing also, has come into the modern medical healthcare system also, all because of the supportive management at our university. And here you can see this. I love this photo of all the young medical students in the class having a yoga break. That is an image that really makes me smile always, that how all those young medical students in the middle of a lecture on anatomy, physiology, pathology can have a yoga break and have that beautiful stretch coming into their life. You can again see during the medical meetings with our professors and clinicians, we get them to do a bit of stretch. Again, the nursing staff from our hospital, they come in. You can see them doing Bhramari, the bumblebee, learning to relax before they go back to take care of people. And the young people all coming together for a mass performance for National Youth Day. Empowering the community with various activities that we take out into the community. Working with many organizations across the world to take this message to them. Creating innovations and best practices of work with healthcare, special children, silver yoga for the senior citizens, yoga for the third gender. One of the issues we deal with is the transgender population and gender identity issues. And we bring yoga into their life, helping deal with so many emotional and psychosocial issues that are there in that community. Very effectively it is happening. And again, taking it down into the grassroots, in the rural health, making yoga fun for special children, and creating our own models of yogic assessment that can also be there. And upgrading our best practices, putting together videos and all. And just amazing work. This is with our transgender community in Pondicherry, having a beautiful yoga day stretch. Children at one of the special schools, in the hospice with all the elderly women who were there, who have been sent away by the family, and our nuns running the hospice and us giving the yoga there, senior citizen associations, and contributing to a policy on salitogenesis. We are having courses and also are offering internship opportunities for people who are already yoga teachers and therapists to come for a short time of 3 months and experience hands-on experience of this work in our hospital, and setting up a nodal pathway that has been appreciated by people from all over the world. Dr. Nagendra, one of the most eminent leaders of the yoga movement, Dr. Bijlani, my own Ammaji, Kalavati in the UK, Dr. Shirley Tellis, Joseph Lepage, Sridharan Sir from the Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram, and bringing in beautiful feedback with the support of the local media who has highlighted it. And Dr. Dilip Sarkar, who was the past president of American Heart Association and International Association Yoga Therapists, saying this is 21st century medicine. As I end today's presentation, I just would like to share with you. For too long, we as a race, as a species, have looked at ego-logical perspective, where we are the top and everything else is below us for use, misuse, disuse, and abuse. I think we need to move out of this. We need to move from an ego-logical to an ecological paradigm. A paradigm where we realize we are part of this holistic system on this planet. We as a species are not the ruler. We are not the owner. We are the caretaker. We are expected to take care of this planet. We are to take care of each other. We are to take care of the less privileged societies on this planet. And for this, the highest attitude I always feel is an attitude of gratitude, where we have gratitude to life, gratitude for the people who come into our life, gratitude to people who go out of our life sometimes also. They decided to go out of your life. Maybe it is for your growth. They have done that. Why are you holding on to it? Can we have gratitude for everything? Because through gratitude, we definitely induce and educe the relaxation response. This was the message I wanted to share with you today, because it's a message that is very close to my heart. It is a message that comes out of a life that is filled with yoga, an opportunity to be a medical doctor, to be in yoga. I would not call myself a yogi, but definitely an aspiring yogi. I say aspiring yogi, potential yogi is always where we are, because for me, a yogi is a very high state of being, but we are working towards it. And when we can work with each other, when we can share and care with each other, we grow together. And that is the message I wanted to share with you today. So with this, I end my presentation part, and over to you, Saji.
Thank you, Anbarji. Can we take a few questions if you have enough time? Okay, thank you. Please unmute yourself and start the questions, please. Cannot hear Delia, please. Okay.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much for this high-level scientific piece of research and presentation. All my gratitude to you and all your team from Pondicherry for putting together all this research. I'm overwhelmed of seeing what you are doing there. And yes, thank you, Saji. Thank you very much for this presentation. I have a question with regards to what I would call knowledge transfer. You talk about pathogenic approach and salutogenic approach. And you mentioned that in yoga, the relaxation part, it's very important in order to be in good health. Well, this is a non-clinical intervention. I mean, people don't need to do a surgery in order to be in good health. They need to practice yoga and relaxation. And you also said that you talk to the pharmaceutical corps, and sometimes they do not understand you. But do you also try to approach the World Health Organization in order to provide them all this quality research you are doing, in order to transfer the knowledge that you are sharing and you are doing in Pondicherry to the, let's say, the world community? And if you already try to do so, are they listening to you, the policymakers from the World Health Organization? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Delia, for that beautiful question. We have been spreading the good word. Wherever I am part of the National Board for Yoga in the Government of India. So at every meeting, I bring this up. I am part of the World Health Organization Task Force for Yoga. I brought it up there also. But what happens is, all these organizations, they will listen to people who have power. They don't listen to people who do the work. And this is one of the big issues we always will have. So they do listen to me, but then after that, they don't really do much about it. And the reason is, if you want them to listen, you should be a great guru who has, thousands of centers around the world, and then they will listen to you because, you have millions of followers on Twitter. Okay. You have, millions and billions of likes on your videos. My videos have at the most 50,000 views on them. A few of them 60,000. Many of them a couple of hundred. So, I don't have the power that they want to be heard. And so this is an issue we all have. But how we make ourselves heard is by our publication. And more than 300 of my publications are out there. They are referenced and quoted by other researchers. They are coming into policy documents. And the National Health Portal of the Government of India references 12 of our publications in their publication list. So, step by step, centimeter by centimeter, millimeter by millimeter, inch by inch, we are moving forward. But when it will happen is when somebody like Sri Ravi Shankar or, Baba Ramdev or Dean Ornish, when they say it, it's going to be heard. So I don't worry about whether they hear me or not. I keep on saying it. I keep on sharing it. And more the community is opening up. And what I must say today is there are many medical institutions around the world who are using our model. They are starting to find this a model that they can use. And universities like LMU and Maryland, they have yoga therapy programs in the USA where these type of concepts are coming alive. And the LMU students of yoga studies, they visit Pondicherry. They have come 2 years. Last year, because of COVID, we had to cancel their trip. So they come to see what is happening, to take it back into their community. So I think my approach has been more of from the grassroots going up towards the organizations rather than coming down. And I feel we are making progress. Compared to 30 years ago, I think today we are at a better place. And we recently had a wonderful article written on our approach by a third person. So, you know, me talking about our work is one thing. A third person talking about our work is something very special. And so when this starts to happen, I think I become very happy. I say, I don't have to be my own cheerleader anymore. I have other people cheering me on.
Thank you. Next question, please. You can unmute. Yeah.
Dr. Ananda, thank you very much for that very enthusiastic and knowledgeable presentation. My question is, I've heard a lot in the Western communities about functional medicine and the concept of that. Is that similar to the integrative medical approach that you're talking about? Is it the same kind of banner under a different name?
I would say it is similar. It is like, you know, when I talk about salitogenesis as a term is, you know, maybe about 4 decades old, and it came through Antonovsky and his work in the social studies side, and again, anthropology. But salitogenesis as a concept is thousands of years old in Indian culture, where we have the concept of swast. Swast is salitogenesis. But, you know, this new term is salitogenesis. So I would say that this type of work that we are doing, because yoga as a therapy has always looked at wholesomeness, the whole person approach. So functional medicine is a new version of the same. So I think, you know, definitely there are similarities. And again, mind-body medicine is again a new way to look at it. Psychosomatic medicine, functional medicine, mind-body medicine, the new concept of lifestyle modifications. These are all new terminologies through which these teachings can be taken forward. And even in conditions which today are prevalent, post-trauma. You know, we are looking at post-trauma and nobody has yet understood long COVID, which means you have COVID and for months and months, you know, there are a lot of things happening that no one can explain and they think it's all in your head. Well, most of the time it is long COVID. It could be physical, but we are finding a lot of it as mental imbalance, lot of anxiety, lot of depression, lot of self-hate, lot of, you know, inability to be part of society in many people with long COVID. And what I told people is, you know, we have not understood that long COVID should also be approached as if we are approaching post-trauma, because COVID is also a form of trauma. We are in the middle of the pandemic. Okay, we are not yet at the other end. But if you think of COVID as a trauma, because it doesn't impact only the individual, it impacts the whole family. It impacts the whole society. When in India, someone would have COVID during the first wave, after the second wave, we stopped caring. You know, people just say it's so common. You know, you are like water, whether the water is above my nose or my head, it doesn't matter. I have drowned. You know, people come to that type of approach. But I remember in the first wave, if one person had COVID on that street, that whole street was locked down. Now imagine this societal trauma that we are facing as a society, and nobody is approaching this. And this is where we more than ever, we need to understand the mind-body aspects, the aspects that go into being who we are. Because all the scans are looking at your brain, the scans are looking at your lungs, but they are not understanding what you are thinking. They are not understanding what you are feeling every time your heart beats in your chest. So yes, to give an answer to your question, I would say they are similar. But for me, of course, I am definitely biased. I'm definitely prejudiced, because for me, yoga already has it all. Because for me, yoga is everything. So everything I find in medicine, every new concept that comes up, I find that it is a new packaging of the same wisdom that has been timeless. Not only the Indian culture, all traditional cultures have had that wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
So, Vanakkam, sir.
Vanakkam.
I hope you hear me. So, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, sir. I have two questions. One is, I'm working in a government hospital where there are majority of the patients come from underdeveloped villages. It's very, very difficult to, even talk them out of certain medicines, which is not really required for them. So how do we approach such patients, where it's very difficult, there's so much resistance in even asking them to do some breathing exercises? That is one question. Secondly, there are certain diseases that are pregnancy induced. Even the pathogenesis of those diseases are very difficult to understand. For example, preeclampsia, obstetric cholestasis, where it's hormone induced. We don't understand the pathogenesis yet. But these are the patients that actually suffer the most, as far as pregnancy is concerned. So how do we approach such patients, sir?
Thank you, Lodika. And I think those are very pertinent questions that I have struggled with as a doctor working in places where, people believe that all they need is an injection or they need that wonder drug. So it becomes a bit difficult. But what I have found is that if you talk to the people, you give them a space where they can express themselves. Now, sometimes it will be tough in your outpatient where you have to deal with 100 people in 3 hours. And this is the usual rate in India, 100 patients in 3 hours. You cannot really talk to anybody. But if you can start to give them 15 minutes where they can express themselves and you listen, I think what every person who is seeking care, every care seeker, what are they seeking? They are not seeking medicine. They are not seeking surgery. They are seeking care. So if we as a caregiver, that is what we are to be as a healthcare professional, we are to be a caregiver. If we can give them the care by listening to them, this is where you may have to say, okay, this individual, can you give them one of your afternoons where you have 1 hour for you to go and have a nap? Can you give that to 4 people that you give them 15 minutes each and just listen to their life story? Listen to their aspirations. Listen to what is actually bogging them down. Because if you do that, they will open up to you. And at that moment, you will realize what is the therapy they really need. I have often told a story of the old lady. Well, that was many years ago. Now I have redefined old and young. As we become older, we redefine old and young. But I remember this lady in one of the villages. I was working as a medical officer, and she had hypertension, and everything would be fine with medicine. And every few months, it would become uncontrolled. And we really didn't know what was happening till I started talking to her. And when I talked to her, I realized every time her son would visit her, he was living in another town. Every few months when the son visited her, her blood pressure went up and went out of control. Because this guy was unemployed. He was not taking care of his family, wife and kids. And as soon as he came to visit her, what would happen is, oh, my son is like this, and I have been such a failure as a mother, and I have not done well, and oh, I didn't bring him up, and look at him, and what will his wife do? What all this comes in, and no amount of medicine would control her blood pressure. Now, the moment she and I understood it by having a conversation, after we understood it, that stopped happening, because she started realizing by thinking about her son's problem, she was becoming a bigger problem to herself and to her son. So I think this is where we need to have a conversation. So you were talking about pregnant mothers and pregnancy leading to various complications, gestational diabetes, gestational blood pressure shoots, which become eclampsia, preeclampsia, and other things, or cholecystitis. I think what is important is talk to that pregnant mother about her pregnancy. What does she think about the baby developing in her? What is her relationship with that baby? What is her relationship with the father of that baby? Is she worried about, oh, if I have this baby, what's going to happen? Is it a financial worry? Is it a societal worry? Is it a relationship worry? Is it that she didn't want that child? Or is it that she's worried that because she is pregnant, she cannot go to work, and because of that, her other child is not taken care of? See, these are the things that we are not addressing as a healthcare professional. We are looking at the blood pressure and we are giving her medicine. We are looking at her blood sugar and we are giving her medicine. We are not addressing the mind-body issue. Remember, I said the Adi, that the psychic disassociation, we have to go back and address that. And this is where, for me, I think being a doctor, the two most important qualities of a good doctor and a good therapist, whatever therapy it may be, two good qualities. You should be a good listener. You should be a good listener. And second, you should have a compassionate heart. Skill is secondary. Qualifications is secondary. Do you have a compassionate heart? Can you have empathy for the one who is coming to you seeking care? Can you have empathy? And can you listen to the other person's needs? Because if you don't listen to their need, you can never fulfill their need, no matter what drug you give them. And I think this is the most untaught aspect of medical school. No medical professor tells us this.
Thank you, Dr. Wonderful question and very information. So next one, please.
Thank you so much, sir, for this holistic explanations. And this is really indeed an eye-opening for all those who are discarding yoga. They're labeling yoga as a pseudoscience, and they're discarding all its possibilities. And thank you so much for all these explanations.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question to Dr. Balaji. Yeah, Dr. Balaji. So we are yogi practitioner, and I've been to an introduction course to yoga therapy with a certificate to become a yoga therapist. But in me, there was always question like, but I'm not ready to be a yoga therapist. How much qualification should one have after being a yoga teacher to become a yoga therapist?
That's an excellent question. Excellent question. Because it's not really a certificate that makes you a therapist. The certificate is just insurance protection. So certification is only a protection for insurance, liability protection. What I will say is that there's no real point. You know, it's a very thin line where a yoga teacher becomes a therapist, especially with experience, because many experienced yoga teachers have the knowledge, have the skill, have the competency, and can start to move into yoga therapy, but don't have a piece of paper. So this is an issue we always deal with. How I would look at it is, when someone comes to you with a health need, and it already happens, often it happens even in a yoga class. Somebody comes to you for a general yoga class and they say, oh, you know, I have diabetes, and you know, you start to modify what you're teaching them to include practices you have been told will help them. So this already happens a bit. But say someone comes to you and says, I have a certain health issue. Now, when they talk about the health issue, you should know what they are talking about. I think this is very important. Just I'll come back. I think there was a bit of a net issue. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, fine. I think there was just a small internet block. Coming back. So when someone comes to you with a specific health problem, a health issue, as a therapist, you need to understand the health issue. So for me, this is one of the important aspects of a yoga teacher becoming a yoga therapist, is we need to understand different health issues, which may be understood from a modern medical standpoint, like what is hypertension? What is diabetes? What is low back pain? What are the causes of low back pain? So I would say a yoga therapist needs to have an understanding of the various medical conditions. That is one need. The second need is, what is the yogic pathophysiology? And so many of the yoga therapy courses I know of do not teach it. So they say, you have diabetes, these are the asanas. I say, no, that's not yoga therapy. I call it yogopathy. Okay, yogopathy. That's what I call it. Allopathy, naturopathy, homeopathy, osteopathy, yogopathy. Using yoga techniques for somebody else's diagnosis. So you need to understand the health condition to communicate with the patient and communicate with their healthcare provider. So there you need to have that. But you also need to know what is the yogic diagnosis, what is the yogic assessment, where we have developed 12 assessment tools. So it's a 12-tool assessment, which was developed by my father. And we look at things like the gunas, the doshas, and other attributes, so that you create a yogic diagnosis. So the person says they have diabetes. You understand diabetes, you communicate with their doctor about diabetes, but you are not giving yoga for diabetes. You are giving yoga for that individual who has diabetes. So what is that individual's issues? What is their guna? What is their dosha? What is the type of thought pattern, chetana? What is their lifestyle? What is the prana flow? Is the prana working properly? Is the apana flow changed? Is the samana flow changed? This is what will make your yogic protocol. So you will develop a yoga therapy protocol based on yogic assessment, not medical diagnosis. You are not treating somebody else's diagnosis. So this is where I believe that having the knowledge of the health conditions, so that you know what is written in the sheet, you should know what is the medical angle, and then you should have the yogic tools to assess the person, and then the practices to rectify the imbalance. If the apana energy is not working, what are the practices you are going to do? What is your toolkit that you are going to apply? If the vyana is not working, which is the circulatory energy, the nerve energy throughout the body, medically I will call it neuropathy. Neuropathy is the medical diagnosis due to the diabetes. Diabetic neuropathy is medical diagnosis. yogic diagnosis, there is a hypofunction of the dhyana. How am I going to enhance it? How am I going to enhance the energy flow throughout the body? That is my toolkit of practice. So this is where yoga teacher and yoga therapist, the difference starts to come. And it's a lifelong journey. 20 years ago, the way I approached a patient may be very different how I approach them today for the same condition.
Summa or namaste.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else?
Thank you.
You know, just I wanted to tell you that, though this session ends soon,
Yeah.
I'm not running away because I am on the internet. You just have to see, there are not too many Bhavananis on this planet, okay? There are just a handful, and there's no Bhavanani in yoga. So if you put Google Bhavanani and yoga, I am the only guy who will come up. The only other person is my mother. And now the third person is my daughter, because Divya Priya Bhavanani is also become a professional member of the Yoga Association. So, and then my wife, Devasena Bhavanani. So my mother, my wife, my daughter, me, soon my son, because we are the only Bhavananis in yoga. So if you put Bhavanani in yoga, most probably I will come up, and I am there on everything. And academia and ResearchGate are good tools for my research work. All our papers we have archived on ResearchGate and on academia, and all my presentations are there on SlideShare. I am very active on Facebook with many sessions. In fact, 71 weeks I've been given a Saturday morning session every Saturday morning on different topics. So 71 weeks of that, there are 108 sessions. I did a non-stop yoga session. So a lot of stuff is going on. So you just have to search, you will find it, and you will find a lot of information that hopefully will help you.
Thank you. In the last minute, I invited Dr. Vijayaraghavan. He's here, who invited Swami Geethandagiri to Calicut in 1980s. I just want to bring him here to say some few words. Very respectable Acharya in Kerala in 1980s, 70s. Vijayaraghavan, sir, please.
Thank you, Swamiji, Dr. Swamiji. Very astonished to hear your wonderful scientific explanation on yoga and the long work that you have done all over the world, especially in Pondicherry. And I'm also astonished to see Swamiji, Dr. Geethanandaji's photo behind you. I wish to bring your notice that earlier during, as Saji told that, during 1980s or 1990s, we conducted here in Calicut, Kerala, an All India Yogasana competition. And I invited your father, Swamiji Geethananda Maharshi, here, and he extended his big heart to come over here. And during that period, during that 2 days, I think he was here. And on the first day, we conducted a press meeting here where he had given an astonishing talk on yoga therapy, and other related subjects. And I am very grateful to you for your wonderful talk. And I'm also happy to see that Swamiji Geethananda Maharshi's son became another Swamiji and doctor who can explain yoga and yogic science in a very scientific way. And thank you once again. I think I'll get a chance to meet you personally or through email. Thank you very much, Swamiji. Thank you for your wonderful talk.
Thank you. We're going to the conclusion on the behalf of students.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is an opportunity to, have that circle completed. The circle of life gets completed when, we have that type of circle happening. And to remember my father coming down to Kerala and Calicut, I think It's beautiful to have this memory come up today. Thank you so much for bringing that memory up in my consciousness.
Thank you. Please
Thank
convey our regards to Ammachi.
Definitely.
Hari Om. Thank you so much, everyone who participated this beautiful day for this seminar sections. And just want to inform you, just a minute, for the next week, what we are going to be in our sections. A minute, just